Hey everyone, welcome to Automatic Reviews. I am Mark, and today I'm going to be reviewing a very interesting watch by Swiss Watch Company. It is their Diver, and it is in green, as you can see here. It is a very interesting watch, and I hope you stick around for that. Before we get to that, I do want to encourage you to follow me on Instagram at Automatic Reviews, and of course to subscribe here as well. Before I get to the review, I just want to mention that this watch was provided to me for review by Swiss Watch Company, but I mean, the review is in no way affected by the fact that I was provided a review unit specifically for the review. That would make no sense, and I can assure you that the opinions I gave in this review are my honest feelings about this watch. Oh, and one more thing just before I get started. At the top here, we're going to start with a history of Swiss Watch Company, and like the last review I did, I'm going to try to fit it in under 1 minute, timed on the actual watch that I'm reviewing, and it's pretty challenging, so let's see how I did. Okay, so Swiss Watch Company history in under 1 minute. So here we go. Stephen Romer was born in Biel, Switzerland in the 1960s, and by the age of 17, he got his start in the watch industry working for the Swatch Group in Switzerland and later in Bangkok, Thailand as well. During his time with Swatch, he worked with pretty much every in-house brand, including Etta. Specializing in QC, Stephen's work with Swatch would prepare him for a future producing his own products to a high standard. As fate would have it, Stephen would end up meeting his future wife, Stephanie, who lived on the other side of the world and falling in love, and in 1995 he found himself relocating to Alamo, Nevada in the United States. In 1996 he would go on to found the Swiss Watch Company in Switzerland, where they still have offices to this day. In the early years, Swiss Watch Company was focused on manufacturing quality watches for the military and first responders, but in more recent years have shifted focus to manufacturing watches for various micro brands that you've definitely heard of. In 2018, Swiss Watch Company made the decision to move forward with plans to design and produce watches under their own brand, and they continue to do so today with involvement from practically every family member. Stephen still heads up the company and is joined by Stephanie's sister Melissa and his sons Josh, Jeremy, and Jacob. I guess you could say that at Swiss Watch Company there's always time for family. Alright, I did it, and I did it with a couple seconds to spare. Okay, so for just a quick overview of the specs, this watch measures 44 millimeters diagonally. It measures 48 millimeters across, including the crown. It measures 49.5 millimeters lug to lug. It has a thickness of 13.5 millimeters. The crown diameter is 6.4 millimeters, and it is 22 millimeters between the lugs, so the strap options are plentiful. It has a 316L stainless steel case with a mix of brush and polished finishing, and it also has a slightly domed sapphire crystal with 5 layers of AR coating applied. It has a screw down oil press sort of deep stamped caseback, and it has a stainless steel bracelet with a pin and collar adjustment system, as well as a push button milled clasp with a quick adjust. Inside the case is a Sellita SW200 Swiss automatic movement featuring 26 joules and a 28,800 beat per hour rate, and it also features a 40-hour power reserve. It features hand winding capability as well as hacking seconds and a quick set date. It has a 120-click unidirectional diver's bezel featuring this textured ceramic bezel insert and a Lume pip. It has 20 layers of Lume applied to these indexes, and it is remarkably bright. It features 300 meters of water resistance. It has a 3-year international warranty. And it comes in a cool semi-hard zipper travel case featuring the company logo on the front. And it's priced at around 650 Canadian dollars or about 500 US dollars. Okay, so I'm going to get the lows out of the way first before we move on to my more positive impressions of this watch, which is actually a very great watch. I just want to talk a little bit about the clasp. I think the clasp is it's a very mixed bag, and there's a lot to like about what they've done with this clasp, and there's a lot that I have an issue with. I think primarily it tries to be everything, but in doing so, I feel it reveals why so many brands have steered away from more complex clasps in the sub $1,000 price point. Because of the desire to have this sort of diver extension, or this quick adjust, if you will, I think that the clasp ends up being, on the whole, quite wide. It's about, this much wider than a normal wide clasp. So right away that creates this sort of bar at the bottom of your wrist. And then once you extend this quick adjust, because it's, it's a rigid adjustment, it's just a bar of metal across. I think what ends up happening is that the clasp becomes ultra wide. And I think as a consequence of that, this quick adjust isn't very useful, at least for me, because when I get it to a point where the quick adjust could sort of make the watch fit perfectly based on a sort of a little micro adjust, I think that it just makes it slightly too wide. That's why I ended up using this sort of spring bar. There's a spring bar here that you can add some distance, but then you end up with this issue of having this kind of unsightly gap here. So I do think that this clasp, it's a really noble effort to put a clasp in of this complexity on a watch that's such a great value. I think this clasp kind of gets in this watch's way a little bit, especially that I also feel it's not been, the buttons are a little bit, they're not, I wouldn't call them sharp. I'd say they're slightly rough. They're at sort of every edge is it needs a little more chamfering. It needs a little more finishing. And I think that while I can wear it, and I do wear it, I have been wearing it for this review. I've been wearing it around on this clasp. I don't find it brutally uncomfortable or anything. I just think that this is definitely the point of the watch, which I think I would criticize the most by far. And it is something that I think I'd love to see them address in future versions of this watch. Another area of sort of potential weakness, which I would say is kind of a con for me, because this is a review unit, this watch has been passed around to other people, and I can see that along the edge here, and I'm going to zoom in and show you. There seems to be some slight chipping of this texture portion of the ceramic bezel. And it's seen in a few places. And I think that that's possibly because as a review unit, people can sort of be rough on things. But I do think that having the ceramic portions of this bezel raised as they are, the ceramic is very strong, but it could be brittle, and if struck, it could chip. And I think that by having these raised portions, you're adding vulnerability that's not really necessary. And as cool as I do find the raised portions, it's a small sort of a con or a low of this watch. Another thing is this pin and collar system. I would like to see them move to screws. You do see some affordably priced watches now using screws for the adjustment, and pin and collar it's not the end of the world. But I did have specific issues with this adjusting this bracelet. There was a few times the collar kind of moved out of place, and I had to fight with it for a minute or two with each link that I adjusted. It was a low for me. It's not a major thing, but it was something I will point out that I didn't really love. Another thing is the typesetting on this really gorgeous pressed caseback. I'll talk more about this later because I really do like it. But yeah, so you can see up close, the spacing is odd here. Swiss watch and then Space Company, and that's not present on any other branding. So I can only think that it's a mistake. It's sort of a nitpick, but it does detract a little bit from just generally what is a very beautiful looking caseback, because it does stand out as a flaw. So it's a small complaint, but it is something I would mention. Next, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to call the mids. These are neither highs nor lows, but there are things that I should mention when doing the review. The watch is certainly not for a small wrist. That's neither good nor bad. For me, it leans more toward the good, but I do think it's worth noting that the size will be divisive for some people. It has quite a presence on the wrist, and I have approximately 7-inch wrists. And for me, I love the size, but I think for some people just prefer a smaller watch, and some people, of course, will have smaller wrists, or whatever. So I think that it's neither good nor bad, but I do think it's something worth noting. I think another thing worth mentioning as a sort of a mid is that it's a more sporty, rugged sort of tool watch in appearance, and it might put off some people who are used to the more compromised aesthetics of a modern kind of what you call like a desk diver, right? This doesn't kind of have that look to it. This is, I think if you're looking for a watch for every single occasion that you can completely dress up and completely dress down, this might not be that watch. This is a more sporty kind of adventurer's watch, as I would call it, and I think that is worth noting as well. Also sort of in the neither good nor bad is it's rated at 40 hours for the power reserve, which is on the lower end. A lot of watchmakers are offering higher rated power reserves, and I do appreciate having that. But if I'm going to have this watch in rotation with a few other watches, I'm probably going to be putting on the winder anyway. So it's not really a good or bad. I just think that it is worth noting that it doesn't have the longest power reserve. You know, this watch has a lot of bold styling about it, but not really found within the hands of the dial. It has this sort of a patterned appearance, a lined square pattern, and it has these sort of sword, generally sword-shaped hands, and they look okay. They look good, but they don't stand out as being all that interesting. I'm gonna just say I'll put that in the mids category. I don't get excited by those particular details about this watch, and they're just sort of there. Also, I'm going to point out that the indexes are just made out of Lume. It's layers and layers, 20 layers of Lume, which makes them incredibly bright. There are a lot of very high-end watches that have indexes that are applied in a very similar way, but I think psychologically, because we see so many divers with applied indexes, when we see one with the sort of just painted on indexes, it does end up coming across looking a little less deluxe. And that's why I say it's not a good or a bad thing. I think it does add to the durability of the watch in case of shock or any kind of impact. And I think that it does look good. I just think it's something to make mention of, that it doesn't have indexes that are applied. The crystal, this is kind of, again, not really a good or a bad. The crystal is slightly domed, which I think adds a little something special to the aesthetics of the watch. But I do think there are drawbacks as far as the way that it catches reflections. And also fingerprints. I think domed crystals seem to show fingerprints, and that has something to do with the way that reflections hit them. And I feel like, for some people, the domed crystal might be undesirable. For others, they might specifically like this watch because of the domed crystal. So it's something worth mentioning, but it's not a drawback. Finally, in the sort of mids category is the branding and the overall experience of buying a brand without a lot of consumer recognition as of yet. I do think that if you're somebody who's buying a watch for brand awareness, for somebody who's not even really into watches to recognize it, I mean, this watch might not be recognized by somebody who's as into watches as you might be if you're watching this video. So you don't buy this watch for instant brand recognition by other people, but for me that makes it all the more interesting. And I think being on the ground floor of a up-and-coming brand with so much potential is a cool thing and very worthwhile, and for me that adds to the appeal of the watch. But I could see for some people it being sort of a slightly a bit of a con or a low. Okay, on to the highs. I'm going to try to be quick because there's really a lot of them. This watch has a lot of really good qualities. The build quality of this watch is incredibly robust. This watch feels like an actual tool watch. Like, this watch feels like it was built for using, for adventuring, for getting yourself into some trouble. Not the bad kind, but the good kind. Just having fun, getting out in the world, taking risks, and just enjoying this watch. Just enjoying life wearing this watch, and not worrying about it constantly and trying to protect it constantly. And I think that the overall build, the overall presence on the wrist is a very strong, robust, rugged watch. And I think that is really cool for a dive watch that somebody actually might use diving. I mean, you could legitimately do that. You could use this doing all sorts of activities. And I think for an automatic watch, that's a positive. That's something that would be nice to see more often, actually. I think this piece is also intelligently designed in that it manages to be not that bulky. It's 44 millimeters diagonally, but the lug to lug is only 49.5, which is not enormous considering that it is quite large diagonally. And the way that it fits on the wrist, I think part of that's down to it being only 13.5 millimeters thick, which is thinner than a lot of watches in this size category, and it doesn't wear overly huge. And I think that this watch is sort of deceptively comfortable for a larger watch, and I think that is definitely a high. Just a statement on the aesthetic overall. I think the overall aesthetic is kind of an old meets new. It clearly is a modern diver, but I think that rather than on drawing elements from the sort of 60s divers like so many tribute pieces are doing these days, this watch almost seems to go back even further. And the solid case with the handsome sort of beveled bezel with the detailed insert and the domed crystal. It almost has a bit of an old school early diving suit or submarine feel. Almost something you'd find at home in a game like BioShock. It kind of gives this piece kind of a old meets new kind of unique look with a sort of distinct appeal. And I also really like the colors chosen for this particular piece. I think green watches can go one of two ways. And in this case, I think the choice of subtle, more tasteful greens makes it look fantastic. And it's still classy, but it's not boring. So it doesn't kind of have that sort of sickly green look to it. It's kind of it kind of goes with that rugged aesthetic. It's this kind of almost forest green with, maybe some hints of more of a military kind of an OD on the bezel, but it's multiple shades of green. The chapter ring, the dial, and the bezel insert are all different shades of green, but they're complementary, and I think they look great together. And it's definitely a high of the watch. The bezel is really a pleasure to use. It's smooth. The click. It's so tough to use a bezel with gloves, so I apologize. It's smooth. There's really like no wiggle or play. The click is extremely satisfying. I feel like the bezel feels like a bezel on a more expensive watch. I just like the way it feels. I like how solid it is, and it's reassuringly well made. Just a closer look at the Caseback again, but this time in the context of it just being gorgeous. I mean, look at this wave pattern, and there's this media blasting and then polishing, and I think it's the raised text around as opposed to the etched in details, stainless steel, the water resistant sapphire crystal, and then Swiss made. I think this is just a very, very handsome Caseback, and I hope that Swiss Watch Company continues with this, unless they can consider going with some display backs on certain models. I'm never against the display back, but in absence of a display back, this is a really, really nice style of Caseback. Here also you can see the serial number 43 of 999. I think that's nice. I think it's a nice touch to show you, which model you got out of the run that they, produced. That's a cool feature. The Lume is absolutely insane. I'm going to show you this Lume. It's flashlight level. It can be seen from space level Lume. This Lume is easily on par with the industry leader, which is Seiko. And have a look at it. Have a look at how stunningly bright this Lume is. So yes, here it is, the Lume. It is incredibly bright. Put on your sunglasses. Even just video doesn't do it justice. It's remarkably bright and a major highlight of this watch. I think this Lume is incredible. I also want to talk about this bracelet. I just think this bracelet is really, really nice. It's a mixture of mostly brush, but there's polish on the bevel on the inside link, and it creates this really interesting visual dynamic. It has a unique and rugged look which matches the rest of the watch. It's just well made, it's comfortable, it's chamfered everywhere that touches you. It's not rough. It's just very, very pleasurable. I wish the clasp came up to the level of the bracelet actually. And the bracelet, when it arrives before you adjust it, is actually incredibly long, and I think it could literally fit someone whose wrist is like 9 inches around. I've never seen a bracelet so big, which might be another high for somebody who has really thick wrists. I don't need a bracelet that big, but I mean, why not have that option? But yeah, I think it's a fantastic bracelet. I wish all watches, particularly at this price point, came with bracelets this nice. I'm also going to mention water resistance. 300-meter resistance, especially at this price point, is not something you see that often. And it's an awesome feature, and it provides additional peace of mind as well as a certain cool factor. It's just really nice to see. As a high of this watch, I'm also going to mention this case. It protects the watch really well for shipping, and I think it could be very useful for storing or transporting watches. And I just think it's superior to a box, and I think it's nice looking, it's well made, and I think it's a definite high of this watch. I want to mention the 3-year warranty and the overall company culture 3 years is well beyond the industry standard of 2 years, and while that is in and of itself impressive, I think you have to combine it with an appreciation for just how nice and friendly this company is. Communicate with them on Instagram or watch their YouTube videos, and you can get a sense for the family bonds and pride involved in this company. And that combined with the already impressive warranty sort of gives you this sense that, yes, I will be taken care of if anything goes wrong. I love that. I love the feeling this company gives off. You feel immediately like you can trust them. They're good people. They stand behind what they do. They take pride in what they do, and they offer an exceptional warranty. And that's an absolute high. Also, as a high, I just want to mention that the features just generally all combined, onto this watch at this price point, you're just left with very little left to want. I mean, 316L steel, sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel insert, 300-meter water resistance, as well as AR and 20 layers of Lume and Swiss made. And at this price point, that's just not something that you see very often. And that brings me to the overall value for money. You definitely get your money's worth here, and that's extremely important. That's probably the most important high here. That's what this watch is all about. It's without question worth it. It's comfortable. It's well made. It's good looking. It's made by a company that stands behind it, and I can't say enough positive things about it, really. So in conclusion, if you like the way this watch looks and you're looking for an affordable, well-made Swiss diving watch that's comfortable and has a larger case size, because that is important, this is a fairly large watch, then you should definitely have a look at this watch. I think it's very interesting and it offers a compelling value. Okay guys, that was it, my review of the Swiss Watch Company Diver. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a feeling this was kind of a long video, but I'm passionate. I have a lot of thoughts on these watches and I want to share them all with you. So I hope you did enjoy it, and I do want to thank again Swiss Watch Company for having provided me with this review unit. It was much appreciated. And so until next time, take care, be well, be happy, live a good life, and then come back and watch another video by me, and hopefully soon. So, okay, thank you, bye.